Welcome to this fabulous new building and to Montgomery College. Many of you here probably know me. For those who don't, my name is Ken Wiener. I am a retired member of the Montgomery College faculty. We've planned a program for you this evening that will hopefully get you thinking in a different way about innovation. The great American writer and political commentator Walter Lippmann once said that when all think alike, then no one is thinking. I'm delighted to welcome you this evening and to invite you to engage our guest speakers with your questions, but before we do that, let me introduce them along with some other guests. When I announce your name, I'd appreciate it if you would stand. Maryland State Delegate, the Honorable Charles Barkley. Montgomery College Trustee, Dr. Kenneth Hoffman. Montgomery College President, Dr. DeRionne Pollard.
Yeah!
Right.
Bravo! Bravo!
I paid you for that.
Mr. Ronnie Galvin, former Executive Director of Impact Silver Spring. And Mr. Dan Hoffman, Montgomery County's Chief Innovation Officer. Again, welcome all and thank you for joining us this evening. I think we all know that the focus on the role of community colleges in educating our population, whether it be young adults just starting out in college or adults returning for retraining, that focus is more intense than it's ever been, and rightly so, because community colleges are uniquely positioned to navigate and deal with the demographic, economic, technological, and competitive forces that are reshaping today's educational landscape and life patterns. But to successfully meet these new challenges, community college administrators, faculty, and staff can't just sit back and simply rely on typical thinking and approaches that may have worked in the past. Rather, they have to be proactive and in a very collaborative way, explore new ideas and new directions, and be open to the changes that innovation brings. And that requires an organizational culture that sees innovation not as a disruption to business as usual, but rather as business as usual. And creating such a culture at Montgomery College is what the Innovation Works initiative is all about, with ambitious goals that include raising awareness about the needs and opportunities for innovation and fostering critical conversations about the big issues and big questions facing today's educators. I have to digress just for a second. I started at Montgomery College in 1971. It's a long time ago. And when I think about the magnitude and the rapidity of the changes in higher education today, both in technology and teaching methodologies, compared to those early years when I was at the college, it's just an amazing difference. For example, I started to think back to what the biggest innovation was for me, and maybe in the first 15 or 20 years as a young math professor at the college, and it was the introduction of colored chalk, okay? Colored chalk. You laugh, but it changed my life, okay? So tonight, we will hear from three speakers who will present us with their visions to inspire us to think innovatively about the future of higher education and how we will meet the needs of our students today and in the future. Our first speaker is Mr. Dan Hoffman. Mr. Hoffman is Montgomery County's Chief Innovation Officer. He is responsible for creating and maintaining strategies and programs that generate innovative ideas in Montgomery County. The programs he oversees seek to improve service delivery, efficiency, and effectiveness, and facilitate economic development in the county. Mr. Hoffman has a myriad of experience, including serving as a senior project manager in the Business Process Improvement and Application Development Division at the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Prior to his time with the NRC, he was a consultant with PricewaterhouseCoopers, where he played key roles on technology and business process projects with clients such as Inter-American Development Bank and the U.S. Treasury Department. Mr. Hoffman is active in the community, serving on numerous boards and advisory groups. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree from George Washington University and a master's degree in Strategic Human Resources and Organization Development from John Hopkins University. Mr. Hoffman will speak about creating a fluid learning, creating, making environment. Dan?
All right, that's me. That's actually me too. So thank you for the nice introduction. Thank you very much, Dr. Pollard, Montgomery College, for having me out to speak. So this is young Dan Hoffman, circa 1991-92, at a very rural Lawrence, South Carolina high school. Lawrence is a small town just outside of Greenville. I actually lived in a smaller town just outside of Lawrence called Hickory Tavern. So back then, I had hair in the right places, and I was young and full of energy and life, and education was very, very different where I grew up. So in the school where I went to, especially junior high, hands-on education, maker spaces, being able to learn through creating, that took a very different form. It took the form of places like the cannery, or the Y building as we called it. The cannery was where, as it sounds, people canned and jarred things. The Y building was where you learned how to tinker on a motor, or you might have shop class, but unfortunately it was where they would send special needs children. It's where they would send the special education kids, because that type of hands-on learning, that type of environment was not valued there. And I fortunately I'm blessed to have been in a situation that I got out of South Carolina. Nothing wrong with South Carolina. But at the same time, I was only one of a handful of students that left out of the 200 students in my graduating class. I was only one of a few that went to a four-year college, and I was the first of not only my immediate family, but my extended family to go to college. So things turned out differently for me than most of my peers in Lawrence, South Carolina. And then I came to an environment like this. What we have here in the county, what the journey that we've started to embark upon is one that embraces that sense of exploration, that sense of creativity. It's one where something like the Maker Fair, which was held in Silver Spring not too long ago, has thousands of people attending. And if you were there, you saw what an amazing event it was. It's the type of community where we invest in places like the Kid Museum, which just opened up its prototype space this past weekend. My program's a proud supporter of that program, of that entity, and we're funding part of the Fab Lab makerspace there. We, at an early age, are exposing children to that creative process. And then we follow it up. We follow it up with programs like the Innovation Lab at Wheaton High School. The Innovation Lab at Wheaton High School is where I teach an experimental course in cooperation with Montgomery County Public Schools and the school and Wheaton High School. I have a small group of students, and we're teaching them, like I said, it's an experimental curriculum, but we're exposing them to real-world projects. They're working on projects that the county is actually grappling with. And they're meeting interesting people. Here they met Angie Goff from NBC4. We're having folks come in to talk to them about what it's like to operate in a real-world setting. It continues with things like the Fab Lab at Montgomery College, where no matter what point you're at in life, you have access to equipment, you have access to that hands-on environment, that hands-on experience, so that you can explore, that you can continue to learn. And that's the type of thing that in the county we need more of. If we're going to create an environment where hands-on learning experiences are embraced and valued. So I'm going to talk about a few different things that the county's doing as well to help encourage that. Here, this is a scene from the Chief Administrative Officer of Montgomery County. This is his conference room, where we set up a pop-up makerspace, a pop-up co-working space one weekend for county startups to build some specialized sensors. That's all part of the innovation program's Internet of Things initiative. In the next 4 to 6 weeks, I'm happy to announce that we're going to establish more spaces like this, more pop-up co-working spaces, where we start to understand how the Internet of Things and how technology and how local startups and students can play a role in the lives of everyday Montgomery County residents and give them spaces where they can create, where they can learn, where folks from different walks can come together and create and make. But all that needs to start early. All that needs to start with 3 basic things. It's not real sexy, but basic project management skills. The students in that innovation lab, they are learning a curriculum. They are learning something based on the Project Management Institute's standards. They're working towards a certification that is sought after. They are learning building block skills. They're learning how to manage time. They're learning how to manage people, communication, scope, what to do, what not to do. And those are the types of skills that will carry them through college. Because as we all know, when you get to college, there's no bell telling you where to go every 45 minutes. Things aren't as prescriptive. You need a toolbox of skills that's going to allow you to tackle any situation that's thrown at you. You need to embrace failure. At its basic level, failure is just a step. It's an iteration. You're not always going to take the right step. Teaching students to fail fast, to learn from it, is critical. I've been fortunate enough to work for a county executive who has allowed me to embrace the safe place to fail mantra that has said that if I'm not failing from time to time, I'm not trying hard enough. That's the type of lessons we need to incorporate into curriculum and we need to incorporate in learning. Comfort with uncertainty and ambiguity. The path is not always clear. When I was a management consultant, we looked for, when we went to hire folks, we looked for what we called mental athletes. That didn't mean they were particularly smart. It meant that they could adapt. It meant that they could work well in any situation, that they could work well in white space, as we called it. Because as a management consultant, they kind of throw you into a number of different circumstances. That comfort with ambiguity is something that our students need to get comfortable with, because the path won't always be clear. The path in life is never very clear, and there's always a degree of uncertainty that you have to be able to cope with. So what will these things result in? Students are going to view life as a series of projects, a series of challenges. If I had my way, the students in the Innovation Lab, or any of the students in Montgomery County, they'll view all the different challenges in life as just another thing to tackle. They'll view the new student that's been unceremoniously plucked from a different part of the world and dropped into Montgomery County as an opportunity, as something to embrace, as something to tackle in a good way, not as something to ostracize, not as something to bully, but they'll view it as a challenge. Resilient students. If you failed a few times, you know that there's going to be a next time. If you have failed a few times, you know that you have hope that there will be a next time. And that's what, at the end of the day, we need to start measuring students on. It's not about the score. It's not about where you end up, and I hate to be cliche, but it's about the approach. It's about the journey. It's, did they take a thoughtful approach to the problem, and what did they learn from it? And finally, kind and brave kids. All of the students in that prior slide, in the Innovation Lab, when I interviewed them, I asked them a question. I asked them to pick 2 words. I gave them a choice of 5. The 5 words were smart, creative, strong, kind, and brave. I asked them to pick the 2 that were most important to them and tell me why. Now, there wasn't a right or wrong answer. You know, for the kids that didn't say kind and brave, it wasn't as if they got turned down. I was more interested in their thought process. How did they get to the words that were most important to them? But I was curious why students might choose kind and brave. If we do these three things, students will be able to tackle any challenge. They'll have a basic set of skills that will allow them to explore any path that they choose. If they've failed enough time, they'll have hope that will sustain them through all of life's downturns. But if they are kind and brave, then now we know all these students are smart enough to find happiness. All of them are creative, as long as we don't squash it. They all have different strengths. They all have a strength about them. But if they're kind and brave, they'll be brave enough to choose a path that might not be popular, but moves us all forward. And if they're kind, they'll choose the path that brings us all up, not just a few of us, but all of us up. Thank you.
No matter where you're headed, no matter what your age, you'll find it all here at Montgomery College. Small class sizes, over 130 programs of study, seamless transfer options, state-of-the-art facilities, nationally ranked NJCAA athletics. The possibilities are endless at Montgomery College. Register today.
Our next speaker, Ronnie Galvin, is the former executive of Impact Silver Spring, executive director of Impact Silver Spring. Mr. Galvin has vast experience as a community organizer. Before joining Impact Silver Spring, Mr. Galvin worked as a community builder at the Annie E. Casey Foundation, which helps low-income children and families. He recently joined the Center for Community Change in Washington, D.C. as a senior advisor. Mr. Galvin holds a bachelor's degree from the Citadel and a master's in divinity from Emory University in Atlanta. And he will speak about community as being the source of innovation. Ronnie?
Thank you. Thank you. So first of all, Dan, I think you got the coolest socks award, so yes. So good evening, everyone. I just wanted to, before I got into my presentation, acknowledge and thank Dr. Pollard for inviting me to come and share the work that we've been doing here in Montgomery County. And it's not surprising that being the wonderful, fearless, kind, and brave leader that she would be leading not just the college, but maybe even our county in a conversation about innovation. So can we give her a round of applause, please? So community is the source, or is a source for innovation. Community is, whether we like it or not, know it or not, realize it or not, we are all there, right? And it's a place where I have done my work with intention. Now, this was not a setup. And Dan, you and I are connecting on so many fronts tonight, not just the socks, but I don't know if you knew, but I went to college with somebody from Lawrence, South Carolina. And that's quite a coincidence given how small Lawrence is. But here's the other coincidence. I got a picture from my school days too. Yeah, I got hair. Yeah. That's actually a wig. So this is me and my best friend, Randy Bowler, and this is during my high school senior year. And the reason why I have this here is because I want to tell you a little bit about the community. Everybody say community. The community that I grew up in Miami, Florida. It was an African-American, working class neighborhood where everybody knew everybody's name. We had each other's back. And there was no such thing as homelessness or hunger because we were the kind of community that was connected. Right? And you know the story, right? You've heard it over and over again, but if you did something on one side of the community or neighborhood that some of y'all are nodding because you had this too, right? on one side of the community that you were not supposed to be doing, there was such a spirit of the kids belong to everybody, right? And everybody was raising everybody's kids, right? That by the time you got home, the problem and the answer were already there. Everybody's mama was everybody's mama. We were just a really close-knit community, and we worked, or at least our parents and our elders did, they worked together to determine our destiny as much as they could as a neighborhood and as a people. There's one other thing about my community that you might have had in your community too. And if you've been watching any of the movies or going to plays, or if you're aware on any level of pop culture, we had Medea in our community too. Right? She was 6'5", she was about 250 pounds, she had a big car, and we think she probably carried a gun. She probably carried a gun. That's right, she probably carried a gun. And she wore all kinds of wigs, but she took care of all of the kids in our community. And when trouble broke out, whether it was with the kids or whether it was with the adults, she was the go-to in our community. And so it was a connected community, it was a loving community, it was a community where we held each other accountable and we supported each other. And what I realized as I got into my professional career is that everything that I've done, when I went to college, when I left college and went into corporate America briefly, and then went out of corporate America back into the nonprofit sector, I realized that wherever I was trying to recreate that kind of community, and I've been blessed to be able to do that professionally in so many ways. So let me just tell you a little bit about a discipline that we use at Impact Silver Spring called community-based social networks. Who has a Facebook account? Put your hand in the air like you just don't care. Who has Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, all of those things, right? Well, community-based social networking is basically all of those things in real life with real people, right? And it is the kind of community, as I look around the room, that most of us probably grew up in. A little bit like mine, right? Where we were connected, we knew each other, we took care of each other, we held each other accountable, so on and so forth. And so in the work we've been doing at Impact, we've been trying to kind of bring back the best of old school communities. And these were two of our guiding principles. People who have strong connections and who are a part of diverse networks are healthier, more economically secure, and participate more fully with each other in community life. And the second one, we think that this is particularly helpful and important, especially in a context where we have people coming from all over the world who find this context as new and sometimes intimidating, right? We have come to understand that the small group is a space where people can build community, feel a sense of belonging, everybody say belonging, and build confidence to take risks to improve their lives and their neighborhoods. And so in 2010, we had the census, and above the fold, Washington Post, Montgomery County becomes majority minority. Don't you just hate that term? Majority minority, right? So it becomes majority minority. And a little bit before then and ever since then, for some folks, the sky has been falling. But for lots of folks saw it coming and were trying to adjust to figure out, okay, what can we do to really embrace this and make this a productive part of our future? And so I won't go into all of the conversation that I know you've already had about this shift, but some of the things that Montgomery County has been known for being white, known for being wealthy, known for being well-educated, and known for being well-positioned close to DC, so on and so forth. But some of the challenges, right? Diverse, right? It's tough living in a diverse community. It takes a level of intention and truth-telling and loving each other to be in a diverse community, one as diverse as ours. Division, East County, West County, Up County. I was just telling the Delegate Charles Barkley, yes, that I don't get over to Germantown as much because I live on the east side of the county over in White Oak, right? But I bet you there's a bunch of folks in Germantown that don't get to the east side of the county. Matter of fact, I learned recently that there are a lot of folks who don't even know that White Oak is in Montgomery County, right? which was strange to me, right? But division Disparities, right? We hear them over and over again, health disparities and education gaps and income gaps and so on and so forth. And all of this disabling us. I wanted to say paralyzed, but the P didn't work as well as the D, so disabled, but paralyzed by these challenges. And so as we looked at the kind of where we've come from and the challenges in our context, this is how we frame kind of our future forward, right? Our future prosperity, we're a county that's known for prosperity, and our quality of life may be well determined by our willingness and ability to do these three things. To gain the skills and the will to thrive in a pluricultural, everybody say pluricultural. Okay, I only got a few minutes, but I know I got to explain. I'm on a college campus. I got to explain what pluricultural is. All right, so the reason why we use the term pluricultural, David Sears is looking at me. Where is Ronnie going with this? All right, so diversity is a word that we use a lot, right? When we talk about cultural mix and other kinds of mixes. Well, our own kind of study and awareness of this word suggests that the word diverse really was used when white folks were trying to understand and grapple with how they related and how the rest of the world related to them, right? And so the word's been around for a while and it means lots of things. And then along came multicultural. Everybody say multicultural. Multicultural means that all the different cultures, probably like today, right? All in the same space, right? But neither diversity nor multicultural deal with the dynamic of power. Everybody say power. And decision making. And so we just made up a word. We just made up a word. We made up a word. Pluricultural. All the cultures together, but no one group dominates. Right? No one group dominates. So my wife hates the word and she tells me to stop using it, but I can't. It makes sense. So, all right. So that's the first thing. The second thing is and this is what places like Montgomery College are designed for, right? To nurture the rich base of human capital and talent that exists beyond the reach of our traditional formal institutions. Now, clearly, Montgomery College is a formal institution, but as we've been watching Dr. Pollard, David Sears, Carla Silvestri, a whole bunch of other folks, we see the college moving from the traditional space into a non-traditional space, reaching out into community. And so we need more of that from our formal institutions, and we need to recognize those informal spaces that are already doing it. And then lastly, to deploy innovative models for economy and participation in the public square. We are a democracy, right? And we believe that there is a kinder, gentler, and braver version of capitalism that we can practice together. And so all of this comes together in a small circle, right? And we think some of the best things that have ever happened in the history of the world have happened in small groups, right? And we call the small group in our world the opportunity circle. It's a small, tailored space where people come together to build confidence, relationships, and networks. Everybody say networks, because that's what we're going to talk about. That leverage social capital, how people relate, how people connect to each other. Do I trust you? Can we work together? Do I honor, not just tolerate you, but do I honor you, right? How do we leverage all of that to create new economic and civic impact in our community? So let me just tell you a little bit about the folks who are already in these circles, and I'll tell you a little bit about the work they've been doing and how this might relate to education, right? So 90% of them are women. 66% of them are Latino. 30% African American, including continental African and folks from the Caribbean. My wife's from Jamaica. Love Jamaica. 72% are married. Now, these are folks who are part of what we call the struggling and overcoming group in Montgomery County. So they probably wouldn't show up in a room like this, right? And there are lots of myths about them. Let me just say this again. 72% of them are married. 72% of them are married, right? 70% of them have at least one child at home. 60% speak Spanish as their first language. 70% of them are employed or working on some kind of income-generating project, right? So they're not unemployed. They're not just sitting at home on the couch. They're like really, really working, but they're stuck like the rest of us. And 80% of them make less than $40,000 a year in a county where I think the self-sufficiency wage is pushing $80,000 for a family of four. So effectively, they're in poverty, right? And having to rely on some level of social services. And so as we bring folks into these circles, and they're working on all kinds of projects, and what they're doing is all we're doing is we're teaching them how to build their networks around either economic or civic goals that are important to them. They have to take an entrance exam, and the entrance exam is this. I'm going to ask you to ponder on this question. What would you do if, everybody say if you knew for certain that you would not fail? I asked a woman in the bread aisle at Giant, right off of Piney Branch Road, right off Flower Avenue in Long Branch. I asked her that question. Didn't know her from Adam or Eve, and she broke into tears. And some of you are sitting there with that question. Maybe, you may think it's not a good question. We think it's a pretty profound question, actually. But you're sitting there wondering about all the things that you could or should or that you wanted to do. Right? This is the question we're asking folks as they enter into this space of building networks to help answer this question. And these are the kinds of things that people are doing around the county. So Erosal Sewing Circle, which is probably on this side, yes. A group of Central American women who are isolated, dealing with all kinds of issues, domestic violence, depression, trying to figure out the North American context, came together to form their own sewing co-op. The Cooking Circle, with Carla's help, David, some other folks, a group of women came together. They're forming their own cooking and catering company, and they're taking classes actually at Montgomery College in the community, so they can get their certification. A youth job circle, right? Using networks, I got it up there twice because it's so good. It's so twice we had to call it twice. So nice we had to call it twice. Youth job circle, young people coming together to build their networks for employment and earning income. 2 circles, one in Long Branch, one in Wheaton, learning language, people supporting each other and holding each other accountable around language acquisition. Academic excellence. There's a group of African American leaders, more middle class, who are coming together to deal with the issue of achievement gap, the achievement gap. So all kinds of things that people are doing together to actually either make change in their lives or make change in the life of their community. I'm almost done here. And these are the kinds of things that happen when they're in those circles, right? There's clear goals, but the fundamental work of the circle is right at the bottom, the mutual support and accountability, right? And so as opposed to us or a caseworker or anybody else saying, what did you do today? They're actually having to talk to their peers. Imagine that. Imagine if we just talk to our peers. If we just talk regularly about what it is that we're dreaming about and then how we're doing against that dream and then what support we could get from our peers to do that. And then the other piece is expanding their networks. And so I want to show you how this works. I'll give you a real world example of how this works. So Park Montgomery families, all East African, 8 Ethiopians and 1 Kenyan, right? Knocked on their doors. We do a lot of door knocking, right? We probably knocked on y'all's door, right? We do a lot of door knocking, bring them out to meet their neighbors, and we get them to answer that question together. What would you do if you knew for certain that you would not fail? And how could you support each other and hold each other accountable? Well, several of them came together, and we asked them, this is them in the blue. You see those blue dots there? This is called a network map. It's a small version of a network map. We measured the activity of one circle. You see those lines in between those dots? Those lines and those arrows, and I don't know if you can see that in the back, they indicate the direction of a request to connect, right? It's either a request for support, or it's some kind of accountability reach, or it's trying to initiate some kind of exchange between somebody that you did not know. This was them when they started the project. You can see the blue dots. There's some that were isolated from the others, and there wasn't a whole lot of connectivity. We call this social capital. The connectivity is social capital between the blue dots. And you see these other government, health, faith, family, nonprofit business. There wasn't a whole lot of reported connection to them, right? Here's what they look like 18 months later, right? And I didn't bring the one that's blown up that shows all the colors that started popping up on the side, but what I want you to see, that what's most important is you see the connections between them. That's trust, that's support, that's accountability, that's reciprocity, that's you told me your dream and I will not tolerate you failing. That's what that is, right? And so watch this, I'm almost done. So we were tracking these things the whole time. Now, We don't give away food. We don't give people's beds, right? We don't give people clothes. We don't do anything like that. All we do is we create environments for folks to build confidence, trust, and to connect to people who are different than them in pursuit of aspirations they might have. And every indicator, oh, purple, sorry. I gotta stay on the purple circle, right? Every indicator went up. And the punchline is, let me go back to that. This same group, they don't have a whole lot of money. Some of them are working intermittently, right? This same group, all the projects they have, learning a language, getting their kids into school, getting certifications so they can get a better job. As a side project, they decided to save money together. They saved $13,000 in 7 months. And a lot of that is because of the trust and the support and the accountability that is between them. And so I leave you with this question. What if every Montgomery County student, faculty member, and administrator was trained to intentionally grow their social networks around aspirations related to their own future and the future of our society, and we measured it, and we would do it and hold it like a grade for every other class? And if we did it in a way refusing to allow any of us to fail. I'm hoping we can dialogue on that question when we do the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Dr. DeRionne Pollard assumed the presidency of Montgomery College in 2010. She recently served on the American Association of Community Colleges 21st Century Commission on the Future of Community Colleges and the Commission on Academic, Student, and Community Development. Dr. Pollard is a member of the Community College Advisory Panel at the College Board and the Higher Education Research and Development Institute Advisory Board. Dr. Pollard serves on many other boards and is a proud graduate of the Leadership Montgomery program and was named its Outstanding Leader for 2013. Other awards and honors include Washingtonian's 100 Most Powerful Women, the Daily Record's Influential Marylander, Bethesda Magazine's 50 Most Fascinating People, Places, and Things, and Washington Business Journal's Minority Business Leader Award. And those are just last week's honors. Dr. Pollard formerly served as president of Las Positas College in Livermore, California, and as an English faculty member of the College of Lake County in Illinois. Dr. Pollard received her PhD in educational leadership and policy studies in higher education from Loyola University of Chicago, and her MA and BA in English from Iowa State University. Dr. Pollard.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here tonight, and I really want to thank our colleagues and our friends who have laid out, I think in some very thoughtful ways, how one can think about innovation and how it is much bigger than the word itself, right? I'm also, and I want to do this now because I know I'll forget later, I really want to call out Samantha and Tacey and the group, the advisory group. Thank you all so much for this. You took something that was a little bit of a germ of an idea and blew it into something bigger than anything, and how you have made it something that has both breadth and depth. So I thank you all so much for this and looking forward to the impact it's going to have on the college. I always get a tickle to figure out what hairstyle they're going to put up next with me. So I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but one of the things that I was charged with, if I could, was to figure out how to bring the two speakers together and then do what DeRionne does. So I have some notes I'm going to go back and forth on here if you don't mind. But what I would say to you is I'm struggling with something, and I need some help from you all, and maybe in our discussion period we can have this, maybe in future conversations we can have. How do we make innovation a heart song at Montgomery College, within Montgomery County? When I say a heart song, it isn't something that is being done to you. It's not something that somebody else foists upon you. It's something that is from the belly of who we are. And we figure out in very intentional ways how that can transform our students' lives, how it can transform our community. I've been thinking a lot about that. Many of you know that we've been going through a few changes at Montgomery College, true? Just a few. Some have said too much, which I hear. Some have also been saying that, okay, what's next? And I'm like, we're going to pause for a second. We got a few things we got to figure out. But what I think is really important about that for me is that innovation in a very specific way is a type of change, right? And the literature tells us about change in a very simple thing. Change only occurs if there's a felt need. If there's a felt need, change could come. Now, I would argue with the literature. I think there's some other ways in which innovation/change occurs. And I'm going to suggest to you there are 3 ways in which, in my mind, that happens. And I think it is because in higher education, we're a little bit different than some other sectors. So if we think about innovation the way it's been defined traditionally, it's a new process, a new service, a new way of doing things. That's typically the most simple definition of innovation. I think, though, that word new and the way you think about it is actually what makes this very distinctive for higher education. Because in my mind, higher education was a movement before it was a set of buildings to be managed. It was a movement. The idea that we would help people have access to the middle class is a movement. It's not a set of buildings. It's not total risk management. It's not what's on the profit line. It's this idea that education has a noble goal and an intent to help someone transform their life and the life of their children and the life of their family and the life of their community. So it's bigger than that. So for me, I think a lot about the fact that, one, change is something that is important, but innovation is something that you have to see something new, right? That's the first one. You see something new in the innovation. So I like to tell you, in the way that I know how to do best to communicate, a couple stories, if you don't mind. The first one, Ronnie mentioned this. I happen to have been on his board at Impact Silver Spring. And in this opportunity, I had an experience that I was forced to see something new. And I want to share that with you because I think it speaks to some of the things that you're seeing happening within the organization, but then also the networks that Ronnie talked about. I was at a board meeting, and what was very commonplace to do every month or every time we had a board meeting, they bring in different people to have conversations with us. And in this particular session, there was a gentleman, an African immigrant. I'm going to guess, and I don't know, he's probably in his late 40s, early 50s. And he came in, and we're talking about the network, and he'd been one of the speakers, and he talked about his experience and how powerful the network had been for him and what was happening there. And in the course of this conversation, he says, well, I'm taking correspondence classes. It's technical correspondence class. Now, between me and you, those of us who are in higher education, we get a little worried about correspondence classes, right? Because I'm thinking, I know for sure you wonder if this is accredited, and I'm also worried if you're getting any financial aid for it, right? And I know, based on the story he had told, that poverty is an issue, right? So I'm struggling with this. So I turned to him and I said, hey, have you thought about taking classes at Montgomery College? And he didn't know who I was. We were just sitting there, and he said, no. I said, why? He said, Montgomery College, it's just so far away. So we're sitting at the Tacoma Park, near the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus. And I'm thinking he lives in an apartment complex probably 3 miles next to the campus. So I had kind of had this based on the geography that he described. And I said, well, aren't you close to the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus? You could go there. And he said, no. He said, that's not what I mean. And in trying to translate, because you can see him translating his head, he said to me, DeRionne, Miss, it seems so far away. Words. It seems so far away. And I kind of paused. I said, well, what could make it closer for you? And he said to me, well, maybe if the college had a little office in my apartment complex and I got to get familiar with people and I could go and talk to them, if I could get comfortable filling out the forms and somebody spoke my language a little bit, then over time, I'd be able to go to the college. I will tell you, I saw something new in that moment because we're Montgomery College. We've been around for 67 years. We have over 100,000 graduates who have attended, more who've come and transferred on. And we've done a very good job of bringing people to us. But I started thinking, what about this student, potential student, who thought that we were too far away to come to us? Hence the genesis of our community engagement centers. This idea that if we take and create a presence with a community agency or entity that is already trusted in that community, because the assumption is that the college is trusted. Well, it's trusted if you actually come into us, right? But for so many people, we seem so far away. And this is the new face of this county. So our community engagement centers is this idea of actually intentionally moving into communities where we are underrepresented, and they are underrepresented in us, and we're building, dare I say, a network and an intentionality about that. So my theory on this is that Carla and her team, they will work with these folks, and we've got folks all across the college who are going to be working in these centers, and then they can say, you're comfortable here, we can talk to you about going to college, you can get basic information and education, you can take computer technology classes, you can work on your GED, we can talk to you about financial aid, and at some point, we're going to hold your hand, and we're going to take you to the campus that's nearest to you, so that you can have the comprehensive access to the experiences and services that we have at Montgomery College. Seeing something new. That's what sparked an innovative moment for me. What I think is very powerful about that, though, is that it means we have to be so fully connected and aware of who our community is, that we're willing to step into those spaces and to figure out how we translate the college experience and Montgomery College for a population that may or may not understand who we are and how we do that work. I'd also like to think about this. I sit on a board, as you heard a couple of them, and one of them was with the president of a theological college here in Washington, D.C. And he talked about the fact that his church, the theological seminary, is working with churches. And in this, they're having very thoughtful conversations about how so many churches, much of their services are directed to the people who are actually already in the church, right? Although their mission would dictate others. So he said this, y'all, something new that blew my mind. He said, we're teaching them how to turn the church inside out. Whoa, did y'all have a moment? Because I had a moment when he said it. Turning the church inside out. And I thought, isn't that the same thing with the college? We want to turn the college inside out, because there's a huge portion of folks who are going to keep coming to us. But the reality at the end of the day is that we've got to figure out how to connect with those populations, those lists that Ronnie had up here earlier, who don't know us, are afraid to know us, don't know the opportunities are here, and that we have to translate our processes. I'm looking at Linda over here, who does some work with a program at a high school here, and she said, have you all ever sat down and looked at your application and processed it from the point of someone who is undocumented, someone who may have attended multiple high schools, someone whose family may say this and may say that, all these different types of perspectives, to think about access. How do you translate that experience? Innovation, in my mind, first starts with seeing something new. Sometimes also, secondly, innovation comes when you see something in a new way, right? Something that before you didn't even know it was there, but sometimes it's seeing something in a new way. You all know that we've created our ACES program, and this is a program that is targeted very specifically to young adults who are not represented well in higher education. And we're partnering with MCPS to put coaches in the high school. Instead of waiting for them to come to us, right, we're going into the high schools and coaching them along to get to the college. What I think is very interesting about this, we have about 300 of those students who are at Montgomery College this fall. Very exciting. I had the opportunity, I called Karen Callender, the director, and said, hey, I typically teach a class every fall. This fall, I'm not able to teach the class based on my schedule. I'd like to spend time regularly with a group of the ACES students. And she said, not a problem. I'll pick a group that are on this particular scholarship program. And she didn't tell me that at the time. She said, I just want you to, I'll pick some, and they'll be in your office Thursday at 2 o'clock, and you'll meet with them every few weeks. I said, not a problem. Got very excited, right? And these young folks come in, and I start telling them my story about how ACES got to be invited. And I won't repeat it all, but many of you know that my story, and you've heard me talk about this, is very similar to most of the ACES students that we have. First in my family to go to college, grew up in poverty, trying to, in a lot of ways, change the trajectory of my family, and understood that translating higher education was something that was very problematic for me to figure out how to do to my family. So this is the same idea. So I tell them my story. Next thing you know, I said, tell me your stories. Lord have mercy, I had a moment, right? Because in my mind, conceptually, I know who our students are. Bob Lynch sends us out the profile of Montgomery College students every fall. I read them. I can talk about the fact that we have no majority race. I can talk about the fact that the majority of our students are first generation. I could talk about our yield rate from MCPS. I can talk about the fact that we have this number of graduates. But my God, seeing something new in a different way changed my life. I can count on my hand, and all of us who've been in the classroom, these 5 transcendent moments that you have, and if you're blessed, you have more than them. But I can put in my mind the top 5 moments I've ever had teaching or interacting with students. This is the top of that list because I simply invited them to tell their story. So I wrote down some of the things they described themselves as. One, they're having lots of pressure from family, from the community, from their family in other countries that they're helping to provide for. Yeah, no, I know this. Yeah, I said we know. But for me, I was seeing something in a new way because now I just wasn't looking at the statistic that's in our profile book, but I'm thinking of Alejandro when I talk about this, right? So I think about in this room of 15 young folks, there were 6 of them from Latin countries, many of them from war-torn countries who are struggling in ways that I never, 2 from African countries, and talking about that translation. So here they are. In this room, I had 2 single parents. I had 3 war refugees. I had a young woman who was emancipated out of the foster care system after she turned her mother in and was taken out of her own home for her own safety and grew up in the foster care system, is now emancipated. We talked about abusive and violent families. We talked about alcoholic parents. We talked about those who were dreamers. We talked about first generation and what that meant like to explain to their parents a FAFSA form, right? Y'all know, you've heard me talk about my own story about that. Honor students in the room, let's be very clear. Many of them are in developmental education, but some who are in honors programs. Most of them are taking care of their families. This one young man, from his sophomore year in high school until this point, is working second shift. So he would go to high school during the day, leave, had a car, was obviously driving illegally, and went directly into his work at Walmart. Worked there, second shift, got off at 11, and then went home, tried to study, and got up the next day and did the same thing over again, seeing something in a new way. Living with grandparents, one described himself as a troublemaker. No mentors, honor students, athletes. Some had invested parents. Some were mentoring and raising their siblings. The community narrative is evolving. We want to be a part of that. We are a part of that in higher education. Third way that I think innovation occurs, you see something you never saw before or had the courage to see before, right? Something new, something in a new way, something you never saw before, had the courage to have. So, Leadership Montgomery, I can tell you now I'm going to go over. I apologize. Leadership Montgomery, I've been hearing from Esther Newman, oh, Warden Green wants to meet you. Warden Green wants to meet you. I said, I know, everybody in the county wants to meet me. I get it. Warden Green really wants to talk to you. So we go to the Leadership Montgomery. We're spending the day in the detention center. Go to the detention center. And he didn't even know I was going to show up that day because I actually said I wasn't going to be there, but went there. Warden Green, we do the tour. He's talking about what's happening there. And then he takes us into a room, not unlike this in terms of a detention center. And there were 4 young men sitting at north, south, east, and west in the room. And we all broke into groups of 4 to listen to their story. And we got to rotate every 15 minutes to hear another part of their story. Unsolicited, one person in every group always said, they tell their story, how they got there, what happened. At the end of every one, so what are your plans when you get out? Y'all know what they said? I'm going to Montgomery College. They didn't just say school, they called out Montgomery College. Unplanned, unsolicited, they know our questions, they know who we were. They didn't know who I was, nothing. I asked Gordon Green later, you didn't tell them, did you? And he said, no, I didn't do that. All of them said Montgomery College. So here's this epiphany I have, because, I got family who went to the penal system, and my own biases about how they got there, why they're there, and why they should probably still be there plays into that, right? Let's keep it real, right? So, but then I'm looking at these young men, and then Gordon Green, he always says, 2 million folks are in our incarceration system, and they're all going to get out within the next 10 years. 2 million, how do you want them back? Woo! Courage, right then, right? DeRionne, put around your own issues. Yeah, in theory, I know we serve folks who are in prison. In theory, I know we serve, how we want them back. So if you think about that, something I had to have courage to see. So now we have expanded our work into the correction system. We are doing pre-release center there, working with 1,400 folks who've completed a digital literacy program. We're doing the bridges to opportunities. We're looking at GED, advisement, placement. That required us courage to see something, because we was doing a couple little things, but the intrusiveness of that. So I'll end on this idea. You can take it for what it is. I loved Dan's point about how we have to craft intentionality in this and how young people play, but this idea of kinder and braver. Those of you who know how Robin and I parent, have this gorgeous little boy, and the only thing I ever want from him is to be a kind boy. Kind. I tell him all the time, I say, what kind of boy are you? In the morning we do a chant, what kind of boy are you? And he says it, I'm a kind boy, Mama. So the day he came home and he had experience on the school bus, and some little boy is working his nerves, because that's how he talks. He talks like he's an adult sometimes. He said, oh, he's working my nerves, Mama. And I said, he said, but Mama, I didn't say nothing. I said, you did. I'm so. He said, because I'm a kind boy. But he was working my nerves. I'm a kind boy. So I thought, if there's a way as an institution, we turn ourselves inside out, we think about innovation in a way that extends beyond what we have immediate control over. If we do it in networks of people bigger and better and combine ourselves, you take your little bit, my little bit, and we put it together, we might get something really good. We do it with breadth and depth. We do it with kindness, courage, and bravery. Can y'all imagine how we can just blow up Montgomery County? That to me is exciting. So I'm excited. I went over, I apologize, but thank you all very much, and we'll have a conversation now.
No matter where you're headed, no matter what your age, you'll find it all here at Montgomery College. Small class sizes, flexible scheduling, over 130 programs of study, award-winning faculty, nationally ranked NJCAA athletics. The possibilities are endless at Montgomery College. Register today.
So I throw it out to the audience. Can you come up to the mic, because that would be a little easier?
So I have a class this semester. I teach in the American English Language Program, just to put a little frame around it. And my class is basically a writing class where students learn how to write a paragraph, more or less. And at the start of the semester, I had rather a shock. I always ask my students, did you graduate from high school in the United States? And I went through the forms, and everybody said yes. Just about everybody. I think about 13 out of 16 students graduated from Montgomery High School. And I have been tempted, Dr. Pollard, to invite you to this class.
Please do.
Because,
I'm serious.
and I guess my question is, we have to see these students. Why are we not seeing them? And I don't want to get emotional, but I'm not sure if I can pull them through, you know, because it's a bigger issue than myself. And so I guess my question to you is, how can we see them and what can we do to serve them better? Because I don't think this is rare. Such a great question.
I'll talk, and I'm hopeful that other people will chime in on this. It was interesting. I remember doing a teacher research project when I was at the College of Lake County. We received a grant, and we were afforded some release time as a group to do a teacher research project. And I was teaching composition. I was right out of, probably 3 years out of my master's program. And as you know, you teach composition, lit, and you reconciling in my mind what I'd learned with the folks I'm looking at and who I'm working with. And I remember my teacher research project was, I see you, I see myself. I remember that was the title of it. Because my suggestion is that how could I possibly help those students move to where they needed to go? And this is lowest level developmental writing class. We had separate reading and writing classes, then we integrated them, then we separated them again. But at this point, I'm having these students, and part of it was agency and voice. Because I had to realize, for me, I didn't have and would not have the opportunity to transform them individually. But what I really wanted to figure out how to do is how to empower them to help transform their own lives. And I know that sounds so esoteric to a certain extent, but so therefore I changed my approach to how I taught that class, and that we had this great reader that we would use and had these lovely stories about freedom and independence and democracy and all of that. But how do we translate that into your real life situation? So I actually started having them bring in examples of things they're working on. My landlord wants me to do X, Y, or Z, and I need to tell him I can't or whatever. And I changed, because part of my job, I thought, if I see you, I know that you don't fit into the profile of what we think a college student is. You didn't fit into, TESOL 567 that I took as a graduate student, because this is real stuff right here, right? So I had to figure out, for me, the only way that I could truly help them get to a level that would help them, I think, feel successful and me feel successful working with them, is to change the context for how I chose to taught that class. That's just my experience. I would love to come and listen to them tell their stories and to figure out how to help them find agency in their lives with that.
And why are we getting it?
Well, and I want to actually, that's the point I want to talk to. In your question, there's a sense of, there's the word readiness. There's the why. How did they get to this stage, this level, without things that I feel are necessary, without them being ready? And I think it has to do with the fact that maybe it's just human nature, we love categorization. We love levels. We like to measure. We don't like ambiguity. We don't like things when they're vague. What we like to be able to say is, you're in the first grade, you're in the second grade, you're in the third grade, you're in the fourth grade. You've checked these boxes, now you're ready. Well, that's not how things work. Ready is different for everybody. Are they ready? I think the fact that we have a system that is built to handle volume as opposed to individuals means that students, when they've checked that box and we feel like, well, all the boxes are checked, they've made it through steps 1 through 10, now they must be ready for you. I think that's the system that has to be looked at much more thoughtfully, because we're not taking, and if Dr. Starr were here, he'd be telling you, he'd give you a speech about standardized tests, and he'd be right in a lot of ways, because we judge readiness based on a checklist, we judge it based on a score, we judge it based on that outcome, as opposed to what did they learn, what was the journey that they took to get there, and are they ready for it? And I think one of the things that Montgomery College will continue to be challenged by for the foreseeable future is that mass retrofit, the human retrofit that has to occur to address I'll say some of the flaws of the system. And
the other thing that I would offer to you, and I loved how you phrased your question about they have completed high school, right? For so long in this country, the narrative of higher education in this country, actually the education period, was two. One, that every generation would do better than the next generation, which we've seen is not the case. And the other narrative that we have is that high school graduation equals college ready, right? So what has really become the truth is that what'd you call it, unequal? Is that what it's called in the math, not equal? We need to put the line through it, because that's the reality. High school graduation does not equal college ready, and that, in theory, is what the Common Core and PARC is supposed to address. But there's a whole set of other issues that go around that as well.
And I struggled mightily my first few years in undergraduate, because I came out of this high school, this small rural high school in South Carolina, and beyond the culture shock of coming up to DC, I went to GW. There was a sense of, well, you graduated, you must be ready. And I was probably one of the few times ever that a white dude was used to fill out a quota of some sort. But I think they were looking for random kids from rural South Carolina high school to go to GW, because there weren't a lot of kids from rural South Carolina high schools applying to GW. So they were probably looking down a list and it's like, all right, that kid, we'll check the box and we'll let him in.
We're diverse.
We're diverse now. We've got some bumpkin from the South. So I show up, as country mouse, and I was not ready. It took a long time for that retrofit to occur.
So I know you probably go to another question, but I'm really drawn to when you said, I can't see them. And I don't know if it has this, and I know you weren't saying this, as much to do with your gaze as it is they're used to hiding out,
Yeah,
right?
I think
Right.
they were mixed.
Right.
Like somehow somebody did not see them.
Right.
That's my observation.
The second part of your comment that I was drawn to was that you don't know if you're going to be able to pull them through, right? And I just want to give you another paradigm, right? And so as the teacher, facilitator in the classroom, who clearly cares deeply for these learners, you feel this obligation to pull them through because you know what this system's all about, right? And that's good. But I want to invite you and maybe even the college to think about another operating system, them pulling themselves through, like together, right? And so what you saw in the circles, right? It's how can you get them to slow down long enough in this hyper warped society that we live in to have a deep and profound connection to what it is that they really want. Now, they might be, 18 something, 20 something, and may not be clear about that, but to start this process to move from struggle for a moment to aspiration. And for them in the classroom, maybe your role is to facilitate how they connect to each other and their stories and how they support each other and hold each other accountable to achieving that thing so that they're pulling themselves through as a group rather than you having to do all the pulling. So we've seen it work over and over and over again, the agency coming from the group rather than one person pulling from the front. Mm-hmm.
I'm enjoying this a lot. My question is really a springboard from what she's talking about, what you've just mentioned, this gap. We may call it educational gap. Not everyone is wired to study and to read and write, but we do know that some of those very students have mechanical capabilities. When we talk about making things, fixing things, building things, automotive, and I think anyone in this room right now would be saying, I'd love to find an honest mechanic, an honest plumber. So my question is, what is Montgomery College doing about filling that gap of automotive skills that are honorable and that can provide a living wage to support a family?
I'll let Dr. Pollard talk about what MC is doing, but I think it starts off by we have to value all work. We have to value everybody's time. We have to respect the fact that just because someone in high school gravitates towards building things, just because they enjoy wood shop and automotive class or the culinary arts, just because they enjoy that more, that's their interest. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden, oh, well, they're not four-year college. They're not ready in our definition of ready. I think we have to put more value on those skills or the methods of learning that are hand-on. Because, like I was saying, it's not that they, those 5 words, smart, they're all smart enough to be happy. They're all smart enough to follow an aspiration. We got to value what that aspiration is.
So the college does a lot in this space. One of the things that, so there's two, let me provide a context I think is important. Susan, what's the word you use to describe Montgomery County? I'm just like putting you, it's the guy off the radio, Lake Wobegon. So we have this Montgomery County mystique that every kid is graduating from high school, they're all going to the Ivy League, they're all going to come back and work in Congress, then they're going to go and work at whatever, become attorneys, make millions of dollars, and live in Montgomery County, right? We kind of have this mindset, and they're all gifted and talented too. Don't forget that, right? So we've crafted this is the Montgomery County narrative, right? But the reality about that is exactly the point that we have to kind of unpack. I wish Ed Roberts were here. I don't think he is. He would tell this story about how he was in a different setting and had some of his automotive technology students who are graduates of our program come in and talk about the fact their starting salary was $50,000, $60,000 a year, and they were talking, I think, to a nonprofit group, and they were all, wait a minute, you know what? How do you get into that, right? So our Godelski Institute, 55,000 square foot, I only know that because I had to read it today for something else, 55,000 square foot facility that has automotive technology, welding, construction management, a whole slew of programs in that, but it comes back to this idea of what we think about what it means to go to college, right? What it means about the fact of how we value different types of work. You're right. I always tell my grandfather, God bless his soul, was, he died at 99. He said, here's the thing, every family should have these 5 things in it. He said, he said, somebody's in the medical profession, and he didn't say doctor. He said, you really want a nurse, baby. You want to get a nurse in the family. You need to have somebody who knows something about the law. He said, and I really think you need to get them paralegals. That's what he would always say. He wouldn't say the attorney, right? Because he said, you need to have a good plumber in the family. You need to have a person who can fix your car in the family, right? He said, and you need to have somebody who can do all the talking in the family, right? So he had the whole thing broke down about what every family needed to have and how he was ready to. The idea is how, though, we define what the work is. Because at the end of the day, if we're all living in Lake Wobegon, we're all going to the Ivy League, and we're all going to do X, Y, or Z, we are missing the fact that that is not the reality. 60% of Montgomery County students, Montgomery County MCPS students who stay in state come to Montgomery College at some point in their career. 60%. That's not the narrative, right? Our yield rate, 20, 25%. 25% of MCPS graduates. Every high school in Montgomery County has Montgomery students who go to Montgomery College, who graduated this past spring, are enrolled this fall, not the narrative. So part of what I think we have to do is raise the counter narrative. Yep. Now, if you talk about critical race theory, right, they talk about the dominant idiom and the dominant narrative. You have to really raise the counter narrative. The counter narrative is that all work is valued and every member of society needs a job. Let's get real about that. And the work that they do contributes to the greater whole. And we all have a role that we play in that. There's only one Montgomery College president, contrary to what some people think. There's one president, right? Right? One president. If you all want to be a college president, you're not going to be able to stay in Montgomery County, right? So you got to have a serious conversation about the work that we need and have here and the value that everyone plays in that space.
Okay, how are you doing?
Huh?
How are you going to do that?
Well, those of you, some of y'all don't know, I do it all the time. So this is the part
Slowly,
but you have to be willing to have the conversation. So there's the other part about us as a county. We like things nice. We sure do. Right? So you can ruffle the feathers just a little bit, but every once in a while people kind of rein me back in. So I talk about the fact that we are browner, older, and less wealthy as a county. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the graduates and where they're really going. Let's talk about the fact that one of our largest programs, our Godelsky Institute, serves thousands of students each year, short-term and long-term. Let's talk about apprenticeship. Let's talk about cybersecurity, where you have a whole pathway that goes from short-term courses to degrees. It's putting the truth out there. At least that's what I'm trying to do. And I need all of us to be doing it together.
What if you had, Doc, since you and the faculty and administrators have somewhat control over what happens here, right? The college is in a larger context. But what if you made meaning making and narrative as a part of being a student here at Montgomery College? And because the narrative, the meta narrative that you're trying to get to is embedded in the real lives of the students who are coming here.
That's what Gwen's been talking. Instead of us, we have this whole work around closing the achievement gap, and we're working. But she said, how are we engaging students around this? Having students talk about the achievement gap and doing it themselves. So these are part of the issues that we have to grapple with. It's more than just what we have traditionally been thinking about and getting other folks to help tell their own stories.
That, I think, will conclude our program. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank you for the great questions. And I ask you to join me in thanking our speakers for their great insights and their time.